Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary had a little lamb over. Aaron Boster here, getting ready to kick off yet another Ask Me Anything live stream. I'm going to be turning my camera on in just under a half an hour at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Howdy. Just getting my camera turned on and getting everything set up. I'm so excited to meet with you guys today. Welcome, Sterling. Welcome, Joa. Welcome, Tracy. Hey. Miss Shinkle, nice to see you. Can you guys hear me okay? Is my audio coming in all right? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Check it on my audio. Hey, Caesar, great to see you. What's going on, Liam? Hello, Elizabeth. Great to see you. Okay, I'm getting yeses for the audio. Thank you, guys. That's fantastic. I'm going to be changing some things here in the background. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got a moderator that just jumped on. Angela, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here. Denise, good morning. This is fantastic, everyone. Welcome, Polly. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to be in the background setting some things up. I have some exciting announcements to make today. I'll be super thrilled to take your questions live. We're going to go live at the top of the hour when I turn on my camera and start to field your questions. I am so excited to be here. I'm going to mute my line while I get things set up. Please say hello to your neighbor as you jump online. Always please share where you're jumping on from. It's amazing to see where this growing global online village has amassed from. For example, we've got someone from New Zealand. That's amazing. Thank you for being here. I'll be back with you shortly. And again, we're going to turn the camera on at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time at the top of the hour. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We have someone joining us from India. That's amazing. Thank you for being here. Joe Siders is in the house, one of our amazing moderators. Thank you, good sir. Winston-Salem is in the house. Got some snow in places we're not used to having snow. There are 69 of you that have jumped online. That's amazing. Thank you for being here. I hope that you're staying comfy, cozy, and warm. Aaron Boster here, getting ready to kick off a live stream. Ask Me Anything at the top of the hour. I'll see you back here at 11 sharp Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to step away from the mic to grab myself a coffee. I'll be right back. Howdy, hello, hi. 74 of you have jumped online. That's amazing. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. Aaron Boster at the helm. Super excited to kick off this January 2026 live stream, the very first live stream of this year. I'll be turning my camera on at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock sharp, and I'll be answering your questions. As you jump online, please share where you're jumping on from. It's amazing to go back through the chat and see where this global growing online village has amassed from. It really makes me feel amazing. Robert Wilhelm is in the house. Hello, good sir. I hope that you and yours are staying warm. Hey, Terry. Good to see you. It is very cold in Ohio right now. We had the biggest snow we've had, I think, in 80 years. There was easily 2 feet of snow that I shoveled out of my driveway. Not very much fun, if I'm honest, but I guess good for my muscles. We'll be answering your questions live at the top of the hour. Aaron Boster here from the Boster Center and Multiple Sclerosis, a single-point healthcare company, helping you make MS boring. Guten Morgen, Candace. Good to see you. Las Vegas representing. Ohio's in the house. Greensboro, New York, North Carolina. What's your weather like in Greensboro today? Make sure that you guys grab a glass of water for the MS Water Challenge. You know how we do it. There's some good questions popping up in the chat. Please save those questions for when we go live. I certainly want to answer that one from Melinda Brown. That's a great one. Nashville in the house. What's going on? I'm going to step away for a quick bio break, guys. Make sure you've got your water at the ready. Hello, Miss Hampton. Nice to see you. I hope that you're doing well. Nona Springer's got a great question. Hold that question for when we go live. I'll be right back, guys. On a quelqu'un ici de la France. Bienvenue, Julien. -3 in Ohio. Joe, that is crazy. Pittsburgh, PA is in the house. Welcome, everyone. $80 of you have jumped online. We've only got 6 minutes until we turn the cameras on. Thank you for being here. Aaron Boster, representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis and Single Point Healthcare, where we care for families impacted by MS literally from around the globe. I am so excited to turn my camera on in a few minutes and start to tackle your questions live. I'm at the ready with my coffee and my water. Let's get it on. Julien, où ça en France? Ça fait 30 ans, mais j'étais en étudiant de change à Nantes, en Bretagne. Niagara Falls is in the house. I'm loving that. Joe brings up a really good point. Joe, our moderator, reminds us that we need the questions to be generalizable so that everyone can benefit. Le Pyrénées, ça c'est génial. Quel temps que vous avez là-bas? We've got Sandy Lake in the house. Pennsylvania representing. San Diego is in the house. Wow. You may win for weather. D'accord. Merci, Julien. So, 5 minutes. And we go live. There's 78 of you that have jumped online. Aaron Boster here from the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. I've been doing these monthly live streams since we opened up our clinic back in 2020. It's the highlight of my month oftentimes to get a chance to connect with you and have a chance to answer questions with the goal of energizing, empowering, and of course educating families impacted by MS. London is in the house. Texas is in the house. Fantastic. In a few moments, it's going to be time to flame up the chat. There are great questions in the chat, guys. Make sure you hold on those questions for a couple quick seconds, because once we go live, I absolutely want to tackle them. Now, for those of you that are not here for the first time, you know what happens right before we go live. We want to flame up that chat. So find your flame emoji, get it ready, and spam the heck out of it. I'm loving reading these questions. Get ready to spam up the chat with flames. We're going to try to let the YouTube algorithm know that we're on fire. We're going to let the YouTube algorithm know that you like this content. That literally helps push it out so more families impacted by MS can benefit, which is really my goal. So Hob LM3 has got the right idea. MSE Journey's got the right idea. There you go. Sterling's kicking it off. Shauna Girl 87 is in the house. Let's get those flames going, guys. We have 3 minutes until we go live. Sit there and spam that flame. Let's get her going. That's exactly right. We're sending a message to that YouTube algorithm. We're telling it that we're here, that we're excited, that we're pumped, that others should join us. It's literally sending a message out through the interwebs, telling people that it's time. Flame up that chat, guys. You got it going on. Woo-wee, look at it go. 2 minutes live, flaming up the chat like a monster. I'm loving life. Thank you, guys. This is fantastic. We're going to need a fireman up in here. Tout à fait, Julien. This is fantastic, guys. It is getting very hot in here. That's exactly right. Don't stop now. You got little firecrackers going on. We're going to keep the flames going. We've got 2 minutes to go live. You're literally helping push this chat out so that more people can find it. I'm so appreciative of that. Great questions popping up, but it's not time yet. It's time for flames, yo. You know how we do it. Let's kick this live stream off with some energy. We've got Candace doing it right. We've got OBOODA94 with flames galore. I'm digging it. April Clay is in the house. Scott's got it going on. Lisa's right there. Come on, guys. You got it. That's right. Flame up the chat. Don't stop. We literally have less than a minute until we go live. Jill's got flames. Robert Wilhelm's got flames. Thank you, my friend. Elizabeth's got flames. Ben's got it going on. Our moderator leading the way. Just a few short moments until we kick this off. The January 1st live stream of 2026. Fielding your questions live from the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. Don't stop those flames, yo. Woo-wee! Seconds remaining. The clock is ticking down. There's 87 that have joined us so far today. We'll see if we can get those numbers to skyrocket. Keep those flames coming, guys. We have seconds left. Woo-wee! Good morning. Hello, howdy, hi. Aaron Boster here from the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. I am so excited to be here with you today. Let's turn on a couple of these fun features. And there's 96 of you that have jumped online. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name's Aaron Boster. I'm an MS neurologist in sunny Columbus, Ohio. It's actually a little sunny out, although I think it's like -2 or something yucky like that. It is very cold in the Midwest. I represent the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis and Single Point Healthcare, where we're caring for families impacted by MS literally from around the globe. I am super excited to be here with you today. Thank you for joining. There's just over 104 of you that have jumped online. Wow! Thank you very, very much. Today's live stream, we're going to be fielding your questions live. MS questions galore. Please make sure that your question is generalizable so that all people can benefit from the answer. As you're aware, I can't diagnose or treat you across the interwebs. And so if you ask the question in a generalizable way, everybody can win. Let's see. I have a couple things that I'm excited to share with you today. One of the things that I want to talk about today is how do you establish care with an MS neurologist? So tune in a little bit later into the live stream and we're going to talk with some specifics about how you do that. Now let's turn to the chat. And 4QMS is with us, an amazing moderator, also a fantastic YouTuber, a great guy. If you're not familiar with 4QMS, definitely check out his YouTube channel. He comes up with some delicious recipes that are very, very healthy and favorable for folks impacted by MS. Definitely check him out. Now he's saying, just watched my video that I did on coding. Very crazy. So I put out a video just this last week where I talked about some of the coding changes, the way that we diagnose or we write down the diagnostic codes for multiple sclerosis. It's gotten a little crazy of recent, and I have some concerns about what that's going to mean downstream. So if you have questions about that, definitely check out that video. I wonder if one of our moderators could throw a link to that video in the chat. That would be amazing. Hopefully one of the moderators can help out with that. Bluthton, one of our OG moderators from back in the day, is with us, and he is helping queue up some questions. So, are there research directly comparing hematopoietic and mesenchymal stem cell therapies? And that's a really complex question that I like very much. Now, the quick answer is that I'm not familiar with any head-to-head trial studying that. And I think it would be very, very challenging to do that, keeping in mind that a stem cell transplant is not a medicine. It's a very complex procedure. Now, what Bluthton's asking, when you see, he says hematopoietic stem cell transplant versus mesenchymal stem cell transplant, is talking about where you obtain the cells from. Which types of tissues do you harvest the stem cells from? And there's different benefits and different negatives to the different kinds of stem cell transplantation, but I'm not aware of a head-to-head trial. Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll do a group of people with one type of stem cell transplant and study that and publish on that. And then another group over here will do it a different way. And then we try, although it's statistically heretical, to try to compare the results. It's a very challenging thing. That's a great question, Bluthen. Thank you for asking it. So here's a question from, I'm going to butcher your name. I'm worried I'm not going to say it right. Diadana. Ooh, I'm sure I didn't say that right. I'm sorry. But the question is a great question. So I know that people with MS can suffer from accelerated brain volume loss. I was just interested, are there easy tests to see if this is happening? That's a great question. Perfect question. Let's answer that. So, multiple sclerosis is a condition where your immune system is beating up on your brain, your spinal cord, and your optic nerves. And the damage that occurs to the central nervous system occurs in one of two ways. You can have focal acute damage, where a naughty autoreactive white blood cell enters into the central compartment, sees part of your brain or spinal cord, thinks it's a foreign invader, and beats up on it. And that can short circuit a specific area in the brain. That'll cause a white spot, a so-called MS lesion that us doctors talk about, and that can cause neurological symptoms. A second way that you can have deficits that develop in MS is from a slow, steady decline in the background, a slow burn, if you will. My friend Dr. Giovannoni has termed that smoldering MS in the background, and it's oftentimes associated with accelerated brain shrinkage. So let's talk about accelerated brain shrinkage. When you are 18 years of age, your brain's the biggest it's ever gonna be. After the age of 18, literally brains start to shrink a tiny little bit every year on purpose. They're supposed to. In the same way that we get shorter as we age, in the same way that our skin literally gets a little bit thinner as we age, the brain can shrink a tiny bit every year as we age beyond the age of 18. Oh, that's delicious coffee. Now, in the general population, when you measure the shrinkage of the brain, it's not very much. It's like 0.2% a year. So very, very small. Now, in the setting of untreated multiple sclerosis, or even undertreated multiple sclerosis, we unfortunately can see a massive acceleration or speeding up of the shrinkage of the brain. And the doctor term for brain shrinkage is brain atrophy. So atrophy means shrinkage. And in some cases, it can be quite severe. We're talking up to 10 times faster than the general population. And accelerated brain shrinkage is correlated with bad things that we don't like. Things like accelerated progression of neurological disability. Brain volume loss can be associated with cognitive impairment. So stuff that we don't want. And I think it's very important that whenever we're talking to a family impacted by MS, and we're setting our goals, we have goals of no attacks, of course. We have goals of not having worsening on examination. We have goals of no new spots on MRI, but we have a fourth goal. And that fourth goal is normal rates of brain volume loss. In my clinic at the Boster Center for MS, we literally measure brain volume. We use special softwares. There's a proprietary software called NeuroQuant that I'm quite fond of. There's other really great ones out there, but that's the one that we use. And it allows us to measure the size of the brain compared to people your age and gender. So if you're a 50-year-old guy, we're going to compare the size of your noggin to other 50-year-old guys. Kind of like if we were doing like hand size, shoe size, shirt size, brain size. And we can plot that every year. And we can see how your brain is shrinking, and we can compare it to the averages, and we can see if your brain is shrinking too quickly or if it's staying at a healthy size. And that's one of the metrics that I follow in clinic. Now, not every imaging center has access to fancy software like the NeuroQuant. And there is a cheap way of doing this. It does involve the MRI, and then I'll tell you a different way to do it also. So when you look at the MRI, there's what I call the poor man's brain volume assessment. You find the third ventricle, which is this black space inside the brain, and you measure the width. And you can measure the width over time. And if that is getting wider and wider, that means that the brain is shrinking and the spaces are enlarging. And that's another approximation of how you can sort that out. Now, is it realistic that you as a human being who didn't go to radiology school could grab a disc, put it in a computer, pull up the images and figure that out? It might be challenging to do that, but I would hope that you could at least look at it with your neurologist. Maybe you might surprise your neurologist and say, hey, what is the width of my third ventricle? Does my third ventricle look too big? And that's that poor man's assessment of brain volume. Let me share another way to do it, which doesn't involve looking at the MRI with the neurologist, and that's using a technology called ocular coherence tomography, or OCT. So the OCT machine measures the thickness of the back of your eye. So when we have patients do this at the Boster Center, they sit down in a little chair, and there's a little chin thing they put their chin on, and then there's a laser that shines a light in their eye, and they just stare looking forward, and it kind of goes zzz, and it measures the thickness of the back of the eye. And it takes like a minute to do this eye and a minute to do this eye. It doesn't take very long. And it gives us a readout of the thickness of the back of the eye, a part of the eye called the retinal nerve fiber layer. And in the setting of MS, the retinal nerve fiber layer can shrink. And the thickness of the retinal nerve fiber layer is a direct correlate to brain volume. So by getting this easy eye test, it can actually give us some insights into the brain volume. So those are two ways that we can do it. And I think it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Again, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. So here's a nice question from Jalaya. Boy, I'm not doing very good with names today. 1979, I got that part. This is a super question saying, can creatine help with cog fog and other symptoms? So creatine is not a medicine. It's an over-the-counter like amino acid. And creatine is used by a lot of athletes to put on muscle mass. And creatine is safe. Creatine is metabolized by the kidney, and so if you had a kidney problem, then we would definitely want to be talking to your doctors about it. But creatine is actually probably one of the supplements that has the most valuable data supporting its use. And many people notice that they have increased in energy when they take creatine, people with and without MS. And so is it something reasonable to try if you're having fatigue? Yes. Have I routinely seen creatine help with cog fog? I haven't, but cog fog and fatigue are very related. And so if creatine helps someone improve their energy levels, it's invariably going to have an upstream benefit to their thinking and memory. That's a good question. Thank you for asking it. Even So It As Well is an amazing lady who lives around the East Coast. She has a wonderful YouTube channel, and so you should check out her channel. She's fantastic. She's a moderator on this channel, and I adore watching her videos. Her insights into MS from a patient's perspective are superb. And she writes the following question. I need to have a surgery soon. Any tips on keeping MS from flaring in response to it or the stress associated with it? So that's a really good question. And humans you're not just MS, you're a person, right? And you have all kinds of different things going on in your life. And sometimes nature's generous and you have MS and you have to have a surgery. And so this happens very frequently in clinic, and it's worthwhile to talk about it. Now, first of all, MS does not interfere with wound healing. So having multiple sclerosis is not going to interfere with you recovering from your surgery. Sometimes, depending on which medicines you're taking for the MS, it can interfere with wound healing. And so I think it's very appropriate to ask your neurologist, is there any concerns that you're aware of with this medicine? And it's also important to tell the surgeon, hey surgeon, I have MS, this is my medicine list, do you have any concerns? Just to make sure that everybody's communicating and talking. Having MS, it is not contraindicated to have anesthesia. Anesthesia is a wonderful thing because we don't want to be awake or hurting when someone's cutting on us. And it's safe to have anesthesia with multiple sclerosis. One observation that I've made over the last 2 decades of providing MS care is sometimes my MS patient has a more difficult time recovering after the anesthesia. It may take them a little bit longer to bounce back after the anesthesia. I don't know why. I'm just noticing that, having taken care of a lot of people with MS that have to have surgery. And it's generally not a problem as long as we are planful about it. Now, one of the questions that Even So It As Well is asking, or maybe hinting at, is there anything that we can do a priori? Like, could we be really proactive to try to help? And sometimes people will talk about, do I give someone a course of steroids? I, as an MS provider, tend not to do that because steroids can impair wound healing. But I do think that it's important after surgery, that if the surgery were to trigger a pseudo attack, that we were able to respond to that. So we want to be in communication with your MS neurologist. As far as the disease-modifying therapies, if the medicine was stopped, let's say, in preparation for a surgery, we at the Boster Center require the surgeon to write a nice little "Erin, she's good to restart" letter saying, I clear her surgically, there's nothing else that I need to worry about, and then we can get back into it. So you can have surgery, you can have anesthesia. I do think it's reasonable to budget a little bit more time for recovery. I also think that depending on what's being surgerized, if you're, for example, going to have your knee worked on, then we want to have the physical therapy already set up. And if you're going to have some mobility issues because your knee is going to be, in traction or in a splint or something, you may want to be preparing ahead of time with food and all those kind of things, of course. That was a great question. I appreciate you asking it. Let's take another one, but let's change up the scene a little bit. Here's a river scene. I like this one very much. And let's take another question from the chat. All right. What do we got here? Shanna Girl asks, Dr. B, for someone who only has cervical spinal lesions, no brain lesions, have you seen this clinically? What else could it be? So, when you have multiple sclerosis, your immune system can beat up on any part of your central nervous system. So that could be the brain, that could be the optic nerves, that's part of the central nervous system, that could be the spinal cord. Any of those things can be affected. And generally speaking, MS doesn't really play favorites. So you can see spots all over the place. It is a little bit unusual to have only spinal cord lesions and nothing at all in the brain. That would be a little bit unusual. And if I saw someone that only had spinal cord lesions, multiple sclerosis would be on my list of things it could be, the so-called differential diagnosis. But I would also be thinking about several other entities that can cause recurrent transverse myelitis or inflammation of the spinal cord. And these would be some cousins of multiple sclerosis, some things like neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder, or NMOSD. I didn't make up these terms, by the way. We used to call that disease Devick's disease after the guy that identified it first. And whereas I don't like using people's names, that's kind of like old school, NMOSD does not roll off the tongue the way Devick's does. So that's NMO. Another condition that can mimic MS and cause spinal cord lesions is a cousin of MS called MOG, or MOGAD, myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein autoimmune disease. I did not make that up, and that does not roll off the tongue either. There are other things that can do it. There's infections that can do it. There's connective tissue diseases that can do it. So there's a broad differential that we would be working up. And so what would we be doing? I would want to image the brain. I would probably use some fancy imaging to look at volume like I talked about earlier. I would want to make sure that I was looking at the optic nerves, because sometimes when we have spinal cord involvement, we can have optic nerve involvement. I saw a patient just yesterday where that was the case. She had spinal cord, almost nothing in the brain, but had optic nerve involvement. And so that can be very helpful. And I'm probably going to get a bunch of blood work. I'm talking like 10 tubes of blood, because I'm going to be checking for oddball infections and connective tissue and metabolic diseases so I can cross them all off my list. At the end of the day, if you're having recurrent transverse myelitis, so you've had an attack of transverse myelitis, then you had another one, or you had spots, and then later you had another one, I'm going to treat that disease. I'm going to be very concerned that this transverse myelitis has demonstrated that it's going to recur, and we're going to risk scary bad words and scary things like difficulty with moving and feeling, and etc. And so we're going to want to treat that. And if I wasn't able to pin down the type, the exact disease, I would lean towards using a B-cell medicine. one of the B-cell medicines like rituximab or something like that, Ocrevus, Briumvi, Kesimpta, because I find that for recurrent transverse myelitis, I have the most success with that class of medicines. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking it. Let's take another one. So Monica writes, PPMS here. I've been told that us PPMSers don't have relapses. Oh, wait, where'd the question go? Sorry, it just jumped. Oh, no. I'll find it. Don't run away. This is why me doing the live stream by myself is sometimes a comedy of errors. Guys, I cannot find where she put that question. Here it is. Okay, sorry about that. So I won't touch the screen. PPMS here. I've been told that us PPMSers do not have relapses, but I do have periods where my symptoms seem to increase. Any suggestion of when symptoms exacerbate to help anything calm down? So this reminds me of when I was in training. I was a fellow 100 years ago, and back then the mantra was PPMS never ever has attacks. Can't happen, like physically impossible. Like a gentleman cannot birth a child. And I remember a patient with PPMS, and it seemed like they had an attack. So they'd had PPMS for a long time, and they had leg weakness and numbness, and it came on over a couple days and got real bad and stayed that way for a while. And then it got better. And so I told my mentor, I said, Dr. Khan, it would appear they're having an attack. And he said, that's not possible. That's simply fluctuations in baseline symptoms. Dr. Khan was wrong. Right? So I grew up thinking that PPMS could not have an attack. Guess what? That's not true. People with multiple sclerosis can have attacks. Any person with multiple sclerosis can have an attack. If you've been labeled with PPMS, it's way less likely to have an attack, like way less likely, but it can still occur. And it is important to understand that. See, here's the thing. It's actually one disease. Let me say that again. It's one disease, guys. It's the same disease. And whether you present with primary progressive MS, where you're having progression of disability from the get-go, or if you're presenting with relapses, it's the same underlying pathology. It's the same diagnostic criteria, and it stands to reason that someone who tends to have mostly just progression could have an attack. So, what would I do in that situation? I would give you steroids for your attack, and I would make you get better. That was a really good question. It's a very timely question as we start to uncover and understand more and more about how this disease manifests and how it presents. Now, I'm a little parched, and you know what that means. It's time for the MS Water Challenge, yo. When I drink, you drink. Let's go. Woo! That was refreshing and delicious. Water is underappreciated. So I ask my patients to drink anywhere from 86 to 100 ounces of water a day. You're not going to start doing that because if you're not used to drinking water, that's a whole bunch. But we want to ease into it. And let me give you a pro tip on how to up your water game. If you drink a glass of water with each of your meals, whether you have 1 meal a day, 3 meals a day, just add a glass of water when you have your meal. Then if you add a glass of water between each meal, you win. We're done. That's oftentimes up to 5 glasses of water. Now, ideally, we would like to make each glass 20 ounces, but I'm not going to ask you to do that in the beginning. You can use a Dixie cup in the beginning or a shot glass in the beginning. What I would like to do is get you used to the idea that you're going to have a glass of water with every meal. I'm going to have lunch, I'm going to have a burger, French fries, I'm going to have a Bud Light, and I'm going to have a glass of water. For breakfast, I'm going to have bacon, eggs, I'm going to have some grits, I'm going to have coffee, orange juice, I'm going to add a water. Once I finish breakfast, I'm not going to eat again for 4 or 5 hours. I just need to drink 1 glass of water in between that. That's not that hard to do. The other advantage of drinking in that capacity, by drinking with meals and in between meals, is you're going to stop drinking after dinner because there's no more meals after dinner. And if you've done a good job of drinking 5 glasses of water leading up into dinner, you're going to find that you're not thirsty after dinner. So you're not going to be going around the house, you're going to be able to not drink. Now, why is this important? Well, for 2 reasons. 1, I need to get you hydrated, right? MS symptoms fare much better when you're hydrated. The second thing is, I don't want you drinking a lot of water right before bed and then making urine the whole time you're sleeping. Keep in mind that you make water for 6 hours after you drink something. So if I drink this at, say, 10 p.m., 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to be making urine until 4 a.m. High likelihood that I'm going to have to get up a couple times to go to the bathroom. So drinking water is really important, and when you drink water, it can be very, very helpful. Joe is reminding us, Joe's an amazing moderator. Thank you, Joe. Joe is reminding us that we have a monthly newsletter. So the Boster Corner is a free monthly newsletter. You can click the link that you see right there and sign up for it. And if you don't like it, you can cancel it or unsubscribe at any time. But if you click it, we will send you a monthly electronic newsletter with the latest and greatest of what's going on at the Boster Center for MS, all the clinical trials that we're doing. I write like a monthly article just on an MS topic that's of top of mind that I share with you in that newsletter. It also lets you know when we go live. So if you are having trouble identifying when I'm on the interwebs, that's an easy way to find out. So if I'm doing a talk or a presentation or one of these live streams, you can find it on there. So as always, Joe, thank you very much for reminding us of that. And if you'd like to sign up, we would love to have you. AF Budgets writes, please talk about LDN. Okay, I'll be happy to talk about LDN. LDN stands for low dose naltrexone. Now, naltrexone is a narcotic antagonist. So naltrexone will block the impact of narcotics, and high doses of naltrexone can be used in situations where we're dealing with narcotic type overdose situations and things like this. That's not what we're doing when we use a low dose of naltrexone. So low dose naltrexone, which is typically 4.5 milligrams, is not FDA approved for MS, but sometimes patients and sometimes doctors think that it may help with certain symptoms. There's a doctor that I'm friends with down in Florida, a brilliant doctor. He's been doing this for a long time. Very, very smart gentleman. And he loves LDN, and he encourages his patients to take it. I have never been blown away by results of LDN, at least anecdotally. But here's how I think about it. LDN is not expensive. LDN is not dangerous. And as long as you're taking LDN in addition to something that I know works, I don't have a problem with you taking it. Now, if you said, hey, Aaron, I want to take LDN instead of my Tysabri, I would be very nervous because I don't think that LDN would keep us at bay. So that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. Let's take a look here. So Hillary Kerr asks a question. Do any of your MS patients not take disease-modifying therapies? If the answer is yes, have they done okay, or do symptoms worsen, or do they remain stable? So the only patients at my center who don't take disease-modifying therapies are patients who refuse to take disease-modifying therapies. I'm of the very strong opinion that if we want to make MS boring, if we want you to help you and your family live your best lives despite having MS, then I want you to be, I got to get my hand on camera, 5 for 5. Being 5 for 5 in your fight against MS is my way of saying there are literally 5 things that I'm aware of that slow the disease down, and boy howdy, I want you to do all 5 of them. Not 4, not 3, but 5. So let's change the scene up and we'll go through all 5. Number 1 is to not smoke stuff, because smoking speeds up MS. Number 2 is to eat smart, right? We want you to supplement vitamin D, we want you to increase your water intake, and we want you to avoid ultra-processed foods and sugar-laden foods and fried foods and fast foods and sugar foods and foods that have ingredients that you can't pronounce because those aren't foods. That actually makes a really big difference in your disease, believe it or not. Number 3, I want you to, got to get my camera. Number 3, I want you to get your exercise on. I literally want you to exercise as part of your lifestyle. Now, when you do something as part of your lifestyle, you're not rewarded when you do it, and you're not punished when you don't do it. It's just something that you do. For example, I shower every morning. You're welcome. And if I happen not to shower for some reason one morning, I would just do it when I got home. No big deal. But exercising as part of your lifestyle is probably the least valued, most impactful disease-modifying therapy. You can quite literally slow your disease down by doing that. Number 4 is the daily practice of mindfulness. So mindfulness is being in the present moment without prejudice. So You're concentrating on the moment. You're not worried about something that happened yesterday. You're not worried about something that's going to happen tomorrow. You're literally just focused on the moment. And the reason that's so important is mindfulness is a great tool to manage stress. Stress makes MS worse. It's true. And so learning to manage stress is a life skill that I want you to cultivate. And I'm asking you to practice a mindful activity for 5 to 10 minutes every day. Not that big of a to-do. It could be tantric sex. It could be meditation. It could be Bible study. It could be a breathing exercise. It could be walking in the woods. It could be a mindful meal. It could even be playing a video game. The fifth one is to take the most effective disease-modifying therapy that you're comfortable taking and make sure that it's working. Now, I crafted that sentence really, really carefully. I want you on the most effective disease-modifying therapy that you're okay with, that you're comfortable taking, and then we need to make sure that it's working. And in my experience, when patients don't do that, they don't fare very well. They may have a period where things are quiet, and sometimes I'm very concerned that's kind of like luck. But the MS is active in the background. One of my friends used to describe it as if you turned a shredder on low in the background, and it's just slowly eating away. And I realized that my computer is not plugged in, and so I'm going to plug it in, otherwise it's going to crash. Sorry guys, give me a second while I adjust my... Okay, now we have power. I'm glad I caught that. I had one side plugged in and one side was not. Forgive. If you have high blood pressure, you can lower your blood pressure by exercising. You can lower your blood pressure by avoiding certain foods. But oftentimes that's not adequate to lower it enough that you decrease risk of heart attack. Taking a blood pressure medicine in addition to a healthy diet, in addition to exercise, is the recipe for controlling blood pressure and not having a heart attack or problems from high blood pressure long term. We need to apply the exact same logic to MS, guys. Come on. Yes, it's very, very important that you commit to a healthy lifestyle. Yes, it's very important that you watch what you eat and that you exercise part of your lifestyle. But the unfortunate reality is we cannot adequately control this disease with behavioral measures alone. I wish we could. That would be really cool. But taking an MS disease-modifying therapy is critically important. Now, the good news is we've got like 29 different formulations of MS medicines that are available. And at the Boster Center, we're doing, 8 clinical trials, studying a bunch more. So there's a lot of options. And I feel very strongly I can find something that you're going to respond to. Absolutely, I can. Now, let's change some things up. And I want to talk a little bit about access to MS care. So let me throw that in the chat. So I am really, really privileged that I get to practice MS neurology in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. So that's a really big deal to me. This is the town where my Uncle Mark had MS. This is the town where my family desperately tried to take care of my uncle with some doctors that were less than caring. This is the town where I decided that I was going to become an MS doctor to learn to do it better. And I've been committed to providing MS care in Columbus for a really long time now. It's very special to me. My uncles passed on, my grandparents have passed on, and I can't help them, but I can help other families. And we have people that travel to come see us from all around the globe, which is an honor. But providing care in Columbus, Ohio means a lot to me. Now, recently, one of my friends, who's an excellent MS neurologist in Columbus, Ohio, is leaving. So he's going to be moving to a different state and taking a new position. He cares for a bunch of people in Columbus, Ohio. And when I reflect on that, that's got to create a lot of fear, maybe not knowing where you're going to get your care. And I just want to remind everyone that the Boster Center for MS is open and that we are honored to help take care of you. So I made like a little sign here. Let me see if I can be fancy and show it to you. Da-da-da-da. Let me see if I can pull this off. Yeah, look at that. So I'm going to get my head down here. So I'm not a graphic designer, so you have to put up with, but if you are ready to join us at the Boster Center for MS, we want to see you. We want you to come and be a patient at our center. All right, and the key is that we're going to help you live your best life. We're not just going to treat your MRI. Now, I put some other information up here. Whoops, that's hard to see. So now I got to come way over here. So this is on the screen to help you figure out, if you really did want to connect with us, how you would do it. So it's actually super easy. So you see on the screen, there's a phone number, and you can call that phone number. It's 614-304-3444. And that's the number to the Boster Center for MS. You can call that number and say, hey, I'd like to become a patient, and we're going to call you back. The other way that you can do it, if you're fancy on the interwebs, is you can just send us an email at contactus@bosterms.com. Right? So you can send us an email. Now, if you want to be really fancy, check out our website. So we have a really gorgeous website. It's bosterms.com. And on the bosterms.com website, there's a pre-registration button. So if you would like to really get in it, click that button and start to enter in some of your information. It's secure, and it allows us to expedite getting you in. Please be prepared. We're going to want to get a hold of your records. And so we'll help you do that. But we need to get a hold of your records and your MRIs because that's very, very important. And the very first time that you meet with us, it's got to be in person. And I want to talk about that a little bit because sometimes people are taken aback when they come to see us. The very first visit occurs only after I have reviewed all of your MRIs and I have read all of your old clinic notes, because I need to have that information so that I can be properly prepared to whoop MS's butt or help take care of you. Then when you come in, the very first visit is typically about 2.5 hours long. 2 hours, 2.5 hours long. The first hour, we collect a bunch of information. So we have you fill out a bunch of patient-reported outcome measures, things like assessments of fatigue, assessments of cognition, assessments of quality of life, all these different things that are very, very important to us. And then we do some very special testing. So we do what's called the Multiple Sclerosis Functional Composite, where we run you through a bit of the MS Olympics, measuring walking speed for those that can walk, measuring hand function speed, measuring cognition, looking at vision. All of this happens prior to me coming in the room. So there's about an hour of information that we're collecting. Then I'm going to meet with you, and I'm going to spend an hour face-to-face with you. And during that hour, I'm going to examine you. I'm not going to torture you. I'm going to examine you. And during that hour, I'm going to go through all of your MRIs with you and your family. During that hour, I'm going to meticulously make sure that I understand your clinical history. And that's going to set the stage for trying to beat up on your MS. So, in a quick nutshell, when I heard that one of my friends, who's an MS doctor here in Columbus, is leaving, that made me feel sad inside. And it made me nervous that people would be scared or feel that they didn't have access to MS care. And you do have access to MS care. So if you would like to come and visit us, consider it. We'd love to have you at the Boster Center for MS. And you can call that number 614-304-3444. Or you can email us at contactus@bosterms.com. Thanks for letting me share that with you guys. It's pretty darn important to me. It's a lot of the reason I get up in the morning is to try to make MS boring for you. Let's turn our attention to another question. Wow, this is very nice to write. Welcome to the neighborhood. Just wrote something super sweet. I'm a new patient at the Boster Center and it's changed my life. Thanks for everything. You're so appreciated. Wow. Well, thank you very much. That's very, very meaningful to me. You just made my week. Let's look for some other questions. Here's a question that says, how much can cost if no insurance? So this is Lynette Toledo. And I'm going to assume that Lynette lives in Toledo, so I'm going to assume she's in the American healthcare system. And if you don't have insurance, oftentimes a manufacturer will give you an MS drug for free, for no cost. So interestingly, having no insurance sometimes makes it easier to get a hold of a drug. I would not avoid going to an MS center if you don't have insurance. Now I'll give you an example of like what we do at the Boster Center. So if you do not have an insurance product, we have a fee-for-service option where you can pay cash, and it's not terribly expensive, and you can see us. And if we're going to try to get you a drug outside of insurance, we're going to submit to the manufacturer on your behalf to try to get you the drug for free. We also have other options that we can consider if you don't have insurance. And for example, we could enroll you into a clinical trial. And we would want to make sure that the clinical trial did not have a placebo arm. We want a clinical trial where you're either on drug A or drug B, but we know you're on a real drug. We don't know which one, but we know it's real. And oftentimes, when a patient is comfortable entering into a clinical trial, they're provided with all their care, their doctor visits, their labs, their MRIs, all the things, and it's of no cost to the patient. In fact, in the modern era, most of the MS clinical trials pay the patient a small stipend. Now, let me be clear. It's not to entice you. You're not going to get rich, but it's going to cover travel. It's going to cover time off work. And if you have to travel from a distance, that's not a small matter. And so I really like that they do that. So there's a lot of different ways that we can sort out how to get you care, even if you don't have coverage with insurance. And there's nothing that would stop us from doing that. Now, Caroline Burton writes a fantastic question. Can you tell us more about the Octave test? I would love to tell you more about the Octave test, but let's change up the scene. And let's punctuate things by a little MS water challenge, yo. Whew, that's delicious. These are brand new glasses. I like them very much. So let's talk about the Octave MSDA test. So one of the things that we need in MS is a biomarker, right? A biomarker is some measure which teaches us about a human without actually looking at the human. So for example, the most common biomarker that we use in MS is an MRI. So we get an MRI picture of your brain, and if we see new spots, we know the disease is active even if the person feels okay. So that's a biomarker. And we need better biomarkers. The MRI is hella expensive and it's invasive. You have to cram yourself inside of a tube. And it's not reasonable to get an MRI for all people, and it's not reasonable to get them very frequently. So having a better or a more accessible or a different or an additional biomarker would really, really help our ability to manage MS. And we have a brand new biomarker that has just come out, which is very, very exciting. There's a company, a for-profit company called Octave, and I don't work with them, but I like them a lot. Octave developed a lab test, a blood test. All right, so you draw blood, and then you send it off to the Octave lab. And they look at 18 different blood markers, which all reflect different aspects of MS pathology. And then they do some fancy pants math, and they add that all up, and they come up with a single disease activity number. So it's called the Octave Multiple Sclerosis Disease Activity Test, or MSDA test. And that number goes from 1 to 10. 10 is real bad, 1 is real good. 10 means, oh my goodness gracious, there's massive inflammation. And 1 means we're good in the hood, as it relates to inflammatory MS disease activity mostly. When they studied the Octave DA test, they measured it against MRI mostly. So if the MRI showed new spots, is the test up? The answer is yes. They also looked at relapses. If you have a relapse, is it up? Yes. And so it's a very useful test. It is approved by the FDA. It's currently available increasingly. I think now Octave DA test can be ordered through Quest, I think. But we offer it at the Boster Center, and the company, Octave, mails us these special kits. So we draw the blood in the special kit, and then we mail it back to Octave. The one thing that is a little bothersome is that it's not yet covered by insurance. So insurance has yet to accept the test and to cover it, to pay for it. They will soon. It's a relatively new test, so they haven't gotten there yet. As a result, the family has to pay a small amount of money for it. And it's anywhere from no dollars all the way up to $100. And for a lot of families I take care of, that's simply not an option. If the test was covered by insurance and therefore relatively inexpensive or free to the patient or the family, I would get the test every 3 months. Literally, I would use it as a running measure of how things are going. And I would probably ultimately get MRIs slightly less often. If I could check that every 3 months, I would really have a sense of kind of what was happening with the disease. So right now, we don't get it every 3 months because that's a lot of money for families. But I do find it to be very, very useful. that was a great question. And also, thank you to our moderator, ForkUMS, who provided some new patient portal links in case you guys wanted to check that out. Let's take a look here and see what other questions are brewing. So George French, 6713, writes, do you think that neurofilament light chain testing is better than MRI? No, I think it's different. So the Octave DA test that I just talked about, I mentioned there's 18 blood markers. One of them is the neurofilament light chain. So neurofilament light chain is a measure that goes up when there's disease activity and goes down when there's less disease activity. But there's a really cool study done, just to talk about Octave for another second, and it compared just looking at neurofilament light against looking at all of the Octave, and Octave was far superior to just looking at neurofilament light. Now, the question is the neurofilament light better than an MRI? I don't think it's better than an MRI. I think if the neurofilament light was sky high, we would expect the MRI to be abnormal, but I think the MRI teaches us a lot more information than just what we learn with neurofilament light. So I don't think that you would just do an LF and not do an MRI. So this person writes, why with MS and multiple other autoimmune diseases, why do I never get sick? Like not even a cold? This is not uncommon. Most of my patients are the person in the house that gets the least sick. And I think that's because they have an overly active immune response. Their immune system's revved up on point, and so they're fighting off all kinds of infections. I mean, their immune system is so active, it's fighting itself sometimes. And I see that quite often where I don't see that my patients are the ones most commonly coming down with a cold in the house. Terry G asks an appropriate and sombering question. So she writes, can you talk about how the BTK inhibitor trials are progressing? I can, and it's sad. So let's talk a little bit about BTK inhibitors. So I've been excited in studying BTK inhibitors since 2019. And at the Boster Center for MS, we've been very intimately involved in several clinical trials studying BTK inhibitors. And I've been sharing with you the trials and tribulations as the data has been coming out. So we've had, let me count, we've had 3 trials read out on relapsing MS for BTK inhibitors. 2 failed, 1 worked. There was a study looking at a BTK inhibitor called evobrutinib, and it was compared to Aubagio, and it did not do better than Aubagio. It was a negative trial, and that drug is not going to be developed. So no evobrutinib. There was a study looking at a drug called tolebrutinib. Gemini study is the name of that trial. And it also looked at tolebrutinib against Aubagio, and it was not better than Aubagio at relapsing MS. And so that was a negative trial, so no tolebrutinib for relapsing MS. Then there was a trial called FENHANCE, which looked at a BTK inhibitor called fenobrutinib against Aubagio, and that worked. That was a positive trial. There's a second trial, it's a sister trial, that was called FENHANCE 2. There's a trial called FENHANCE 1, and I have several patients in FENHANCE 1, and we don't have the results yet, and we're very hopeful. So if both of them are positive, this might be something which remains available for relapsing MS, but the jury's out. Let's shift gears and talk about progression. It's, to be transparent with you, that's really where I thought BTK was going to win the day, was in treating progression of disability. And we've had very, very mixed results. Again, we've had 3 trials that have read out, and so let's talk through all 3. 2 were successful, 1 was a failure. So there was a trial looking at secondary progressive MS, non-relapsing secondary progressive MS. This was called the Hercules trial. And we enrolled patients into the Hercules trial at the Boster Center for MS. And in the trial, people got tolebrutinib, the BTK inhibitor, or nothing, placebo, right? And they looked at the trial for people with secondary progressive MS, and it was positive, it worked. They were able to show they could slow down progression by 29%, so basically by a third. And that was highly statistically significant. And initially, the FDA was very excited about this result, and I shared with you in past live streams that they expedited the evaluation. They did an expedited review. And they looked at it and they said, ooh, ugh. And they were not happy with the safety data and they wanted more time. So they took an extra 3 months to really look at it carefully. And after they looked at it an extra couple months, they came back and they said, we do not think this is good stuff. We are very concerned that the safety is not in your favor, with concerns of liver injury. And we're concerned that the efficacy, even though it was a positive trial, is not effective enough for us to want to approve it. And they told the manufacturer that they would have to basically redo a whole trial before they would approve it. And that's a real big bummer. And right now, I don't think the manufacturer is going to do that. And so we're not going to see tolobrutinib for secondary progressive MS, even though it was a positive trial. Very sad to me. We did another trial with tolobrutinib, same drug, in primary progressive MS. And this was a trial called the Perseus trial. So in the Perseus trial, we gave people with primary progressive MS tolobrutinib or placebo. And I have patients at the Boster Center for MS that enrolled in that trial. And it was a failure. It didn't work. We were not able to demonstrate, much to my surprise and my chagrin, that the tolobrutinib was better than being on nothing. And that's really sad. I have two dear patients of mine that were in the trial. Both of them were very eager to participate, and I'm so appreciative that they did. And they were both on study drug, and neither of them responded. And so we're not going to see tolobrutinib approved for PPMS. There was a third primary progressive trial, again studying with fenobrutinib. Fenobrutinib's the one where it worked in relapsing MS. It also worked in primary progressive MS. And the fenobrutinib trial was very interesting because it literally compared the fenobrutinib against Ocrevus, which is the only medicine that's been approved for PPMS. And so it was a non-inferiority, and it showed that tolobrutinib wasn't worse than Ocrevus. It didn't demonstrate that it was better. It showed that it wasn't worse. And so the jury is still out, but that's a very, very encouraging result. So science is rocky, and we have to keep banging on the door if we're ever going to try to break it down. And am I proud that we've participated in the BTK trials? Very proud. Am I still doing it? Absolutely, we're still doing it. We have many BTK trials ongoing, but the ones that we've read out so far have had very mixed results, and some of them have been downright disappointing. That was a great question. Let's take another question. So 4QMS is, what about this Ocrevus Zenovo versus Ocrevus? So Ocrevus is a B-cell medicine. It depletes B cells, just like Kesimpta and Briumvi and rituximab. And Ocrevus was initially developed to be given intravenously. So oftentimes we give it through the vein, and it takes about 2.5 hours to run it in. And we do that twice a year. The manufacturer came up with a new formulation, same medicine, but a new formulation, where it's given in a subcutaneous infusion. So it's not like a shot. It's an infusion. They put a needle under your skin, and they infuse the drug under your skin, and you can get it done in about half the time, which is pretty cool. Now, you can't do it at home. You still have to come into the center. You still have to get hooked up. You still have to be monitored. And honestly, I haven't found it to be so much faster that it's a revolution. And we really, at the Boster Center, have not pushed switching people that are doing great on the infusion over to a sub-Q. We have considered this in patients that have really poor IV access. So I have some patients, for example, their veins are shot, and it's really, really hard for them to get IV access. And so that's a great option for them. That was a good question. Thank you for asking it, my friend. So keeping on the theme of B-cell medicines, Kelly writes, can you talk about long-term immunosuppression on B-cell therapies? Do B-cells recover? So when you take a B-cell depleting medicine, it does just that. It depletes your B-cells. And if you take Ocrevus or Rituxan or Briumvi, those are such that they knock down your B-cells, and typically you're going to redose 6 months later. Why? Because you're going to start to make new B-cells about 6 months later. So we don't want to allow them to come back out. So we keep pushing them back down, holding them down. If you have been on, say, Briumvi, Ocrevus, Rituxan for some time, maybe a year or more, and you stop the medicine, you don't bounce back your B-cells right away. And so they may not come back right away at 6 months. And I've seen patients, particularly patients that are probably over the age of 60, where the B cells come back slowly. So instead of coming back in 6 months, maybe they come back in 9 or 12 months. I've had one extreme case where we stopped a B cell depleter and it took 2 years for the B cells to come back. But thus far in my experience, they always come back. But it can take a really, really long time. Jerusalem Warrior has just joined the chat. Jerusalem Warrior is an amazing gal. I adore you. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you for participating in the chat. I love reading your quotes and comments. All right, let's take another question. And I'm going to change up the scene. But we've already done that scene. How about this one? All right, let's try this scene out. Butterfly Angel asks, how do DMTs affect healing after surgery, and how can surgery affect MS in terms of causing inflammation or relapse? Now, I actually tackled that question earlier in the chat, and so I'm just going to ask you to zoom back and you can watch the replay because I literally just answered that question, and it's a really important question, so thank you for asking it. Let's take another question from the chat. While I'm waiting for more questions to come up, I just want to remind you again that I would like to see you in clinic. So if you're looking for MS care, come and see us at the Boster Center for MS. I made this little list right here. Call that number, 614-304-3444, or send us an email. Contact us at bosterms.com. Now you can go to our website, which is bosterms.com, and you can fill out a pre-registration, which will shotgun getting you in. We're going to give you a pro tip, and you want to collect your records because I'm going to need to look at them. And keep in mind that first visit has to be at the Boster Center in sunny Columbus, Ohio, where we're going to spend a good 2.5 hours with you. Thanks for letting me remind you of that. Let me get that stuff off the screen. Let's take another question from the chat. This is coming at a very good time, talking about something that's very important to understand, PIRA. So what is PIRA? PIRA stands for progression independent from relapse activity. So first of all, we neurologists are giant nerds, and we like to name stuff. So we come up with all kinds of taxonomy and names and whatnot, and we identify that there's 2 ways that people with MS can develop disability, can develop problems. One way we have a nerd term for, we call that RAW, relapse associated worsening, where you have an attack and you don't fully get better. The second way is PIRA, progression independent from relapse activity. So you haven't had an attack, but you're slowly getting worse. And this is something that can happen and does happen in almost all people impacted by MS. We might see it more frequently or earlier on in people that have primary progressive MS, but you can see it in anyone that has MS. And I am of a strong belief that our MS medicines, particularly the newer medicines, can treat PIRA, but not adequately. We can slow PIRA with high-end medicines, but we can't slow it adequately. And so there's a lot of efforts going on right now trying to figure out things like how do we better measure and monitor PIRA, and how do we better treat PIRA. And so a lot of the scientific explorations and clinical trials, the ones that we're participating in at the Boster Center for MS, are all geared towards trying to slow down PIRA in smoldering multiple sclerosis. Great questions. All right, guys, we are essentially at the top of the hour. My name's Aaron Boster, representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis and Single Point Healthcare. I am so excited that I got to spend an hour with you today. Thank you very, very much. This concludes our January live stream, the first live stream of 2026. And I'm going to be back here in February and March, April, May. We're going to keep doing a monthly live stream as long as you guys keep enjoying them. I love connecting with you, so thank you for being here. Thank you very much for participating in the chat. Thanks for commenting on the videos. And until my next Monday morning video, or my next monthly live stream, or even better yet, the next time I see you at the Boster Center for MS, this is Aaron Boster saying be safe and take care.